Hello and welcome to the July Fire Chief's video message. This month with me is Battalion Chief Dave Pilikoff. Dave, welcome and thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been a facilitator and lead in a couple different projects that, as we were talking off camera before, kind of morphed as the work progressed. So can you tell me how it started and where we're at today?
Back in 2008, when we were purchasing the Crimson fire engines, Steve Jones, who at the time was the operation, or actually at the time was the battalion chief, eventually became the operations chief. We worked on a project of just some of the tools that were on the fire engine. From there, we talked about how do we want to pack these hose lines, types of nozzles that we were going to have. And that was the first rendition. And about 4 years later, we came up with the second rendition of just kind of tweaking what was working, what wasn't working with the hose lines. The final thing, once I guess a couple of years into being the operations chief, he approached me. You had taken over as the fire chief, that we wanted to revisit the way we pack the attack lines, as well as the nozzles and things like that. That's when the pistol grips came off of the 2-inch lines, and the 2.5 plate pipe went away. So from there, I assembled a group of captains and chiefs, career and volunteer, and sat them down and kind of said, this is how we want to do this project, and made it very clear to them that they were going to be the ones that come up. They
Their
are the
project.
Yes, they have the hose in their hands. It's not going to be a chief thing. It's going to be an end user thing. And we got all the lines played out of how we wanted them packed, a couple of renditions of how we're going to pack some of these lines. We're going to give choices, because that's what we found, that people were kind of doing their own thing for their own area. Once we were just about finished with that, you would come to us and said, hey, we're going to be buying 25 new fire engines. Let's revisit the attack lines. Let's revisit the nozzles, how we're going to deliver water. And oh, by the way, we're also redoing the how we actually fight fire with the incident response policy. So we had the great opportunity of actually kind of changing the fundamental way we do business, of how we're delivering water on the fire ground.
And industry's changed too substantially,
Yes.
and continuously, and that makes a big difference as well, as you all have discovered. So you said a lot of testing. So what was the core points that were involved in that testing?
We approached a lot of the major manufacturers for hose, as well as the manufacturers for nozzles, and we told them what we were doing, and we wanted to have some samples, and we wanted to thoroughly test the hose with friction loss, with water delivery, gallons per minute, nozzle reaction, and we ultimately settled on, there was 2 types of nozzles. We were looking at the task force tip, and we were also looking at the Elkhart low pressure fixed gallonage nozzles like we currently have. And we got all that equipment, and we farmed it out to some of the busier departments with parameters on how we wanted them tested. And we gave them 3 months to whether they actually performed on actual incidents, as well as testing in realistic, under realistic circumstances.
Right.
And we compiled all that information back. And again, I made sure that they understood this is going to come from the people that are riding the fire engines and not the people that are riding in chief's buggies. They're going to pick what we are going to use to move forward.
And in about 3 months, you came with the final recommendation from the group, and the recommendation was to transition to Mercedes as a brand, and I'll get you to explain what Mercedes is, but exchange the 1 3/4 for 1.5 on the engine company base platform. Can you explain what's unique about Mercedes than the other national hose, as an example, that we're using today?
Yeah, one of the things we like, Captain Dietz and I, when we went to FDIC in Indianapolis, we talked to the manufacturers, and the one thing I'm a big proponent and big fan of under one roof construction, whether it comes to fire engines, fire trucks, they construct the hose, the inner and outer liner, the inner and outer jacket, the inner liner, as well as the couplings are all done under one roof. And the way that they construct their hose it makes it so it would be next to impossible for that hose to delaminate. And everybody remembers we had a huge problem with our supply line with the delamination.
And as this picture shows on the screen, on the left-hand side, that Mercedes hose, I'm going to very much simplify the description. The membrane is kind of bonded and impregnated into the jacket, so that it's not a sleeve of the rubber liner. It's actually bonded together with the outer jacket of the weave, so that it's much smoother. And as these two side-by-side pictures show, that's how you get a friction loss difference between the Mercedes brand and the other brands out there.
Right.
And that plays a big role in the decision as well as the flow capability. So what did you find on the flow?
We basically, at the very last minute, we decided let's test the 1.5-inch hose so we have all of our bases covered. And I was expecting 130 gallons a minute from our 1.5-inch testing, which fell into the IRP, the parameters of the IRP. But Captain DeFries from Station 16, when they tested at 150 gallons a minute. And when they produced the numbers to me, I had to call them up to make sure that they were right. And we were achieving 150 gallons a minute at 140 to 150 psi engine pressure for a 200-foot line. We did kink testing with it, with a 90-degree kink, 2 90-degree kinks, 3 90-degree kinks, and measured what our gallons per minute loss was. It was not significant to the point where we would say this is not going to work. And I forwarded all that to Chief Kinsley and said that I have my opinions, but I want you to take a look at this data and you tell me what you think. And then when we finally met at the meeting, you said, well, what's your decision? And Chief Kinsley's like, let's go with the 1.5 inch. And people have approached me like, well, why are we taking a step backwards? And we're not taking a step backwards because as technology improves,
Correct.
Some of the old things are better things now, or just as good as what we were using. And overall, we exceeded the scope of the IRP of getting fast water on the fire.
Right. So I mean, we're going to obtain the same flow rates. We're going to obtain the same equivalent engine pressures, and we're going to do that with a lighter hose load, meaning as loaded with full water capability, 200 feet of 1.5 inch Mercedes is 20 to 25 pounds lighter than an equivalent 200 feet of our current 1.75 inch.
Absolutely.
Flowing the same gallons per minute. So it's not a reduction as somebody would say, okay, now we're flowing less water on the fire. No, we're flowing the same capacity, and we're doing it with different equipment, thus making it lighter as well as more maneuverable, as one of our key goals, to be able to get to deal with those multiple 90-degree bends within the structure to get the hose up to or down and around to the place we need to be. So that's a big deal. And as the flow test chart shows here on the screen, there's that comparable flow at differences. And as you all did, just briefly mention the fact of, okay, well, you did some of the measurements, okay, 200 foot of 1.5 inch, and then you add on, to deal with that extension line. How did that, results come out of that?
Yeah, what Station 16 did with Captain DeFries is, he said, Dave, what we're going to do is we built lines. We put a 200 foot 1.5 inch line, and then we played what if we had to go further. So we put another 200 foot of 1.75 inch on the 1.5 inch line. So we had a 400 foot line of varying sizes, and the gallons per minute drop was nothing, and the pressure, I think, went up a few pounds. They went all the way out to 500 feet with plain 1.5 inch as well as 1.5 inch built onto 1.75 inch, 1.5 inch built onto 2 inch. We could get 150 gallons per minute out of it, and I think the highest engine pressure we recorded was 200 PSI. And in the old school line of thinking, when we had our 1250 gallon per minute engine companies, that was kind of taboo to hit that 200 mark. But we're looking at a 1,500 gallon per minute single stage pump. The engine's barely idling, flowing 200 PSI. We were very happy with the results. And it gave us that capability of having that, like you said, that lighter line, being able to deploy it faster. So we're giving you better tools, lighter tools to do your job faster and to get fast water on the fire.
And the hose is going to be comparable in color and size, correlation to our current capabilities, right?
Yes, the 1.5 inch is going to be a different color
Right.
than the 1 3/4. That was the last minute change. We didn't want to make them both green because we didn't want to start mixing and
Visually
matching.
confused.
So the 1.5 inch is going to be red because we no longer have the red line on the engine companies anymore. And the 1 3/4 if it's going to be on the existing engines that we have will still be green. So and the nozzles will match the nozzle bail as well as the nozzle tip will match the color of the hose. So we're not going to be mixing and matching nozzles.
And before we jump into the nozzles, all new rigs will be coming with Mercedes. So
Yes.
the plan is the 24 Pierces, the 4 brush engines, the tankers are supposed to be in the building this week. Those rigs will be carrying Mercedes, and the current engine capability will sustain the 1 3/4 as their normal load until stock is depleted, and then through gradual transition that. So it's not going to be a wholesale switch of 3/4 gone, 1.5 inch is on. It'll be with the new rigs and transitioning through that. So there will be that period where we have both for a while. So talking about nozzles, what is the selection going forward with the nozzles?
We decided, or as a group, the group decided going forward with the Elkhart XD Fire Chief nozzle as opposed to the Task Force tip that we're using now. And what it came down to, 150 gallons a minute is 150 gallons a minute. The friction loss was the same. The nozzle reaction was the same. What it came down to is these guys liked having that nozzle in their hand. In the store, it was ergonomics, and I was fine with that because they're the end users. They're going to have that in their hand. Let's give them the tools that they want. I liked the way that Elkhart has redesigned their nozzle. It's a good fit. It's a little smaller than the Task Force, and we'll be able to get everything that we want in that. And these nozzles will be breakaway, and they will have the smoothbore slug tip underneath of it.
So the same chief is going to be used for the 1.5 inch as well as the 2 inch.
Yes.
Application. As you said, they will be color coded with the bail controls as well as the bumper, guards around the nozzle. And then for the 2.5, we're going to go with 1 1/4 inch stack.
1 1/4 inch tip. It's going to be a longer tip that you can get your hand on. I want to say 8 inches, and it is the rubber bumper on the top. So there's no thread. You're not going to be able to thread anything else on it. It'll be breakaway 1.5 inch, and it's going to be a 2.5 inch bail that'll go right on the 2.5, and that's going to give you, for exact numbers, 326 gallons a minute, which matches our current inventory at 2.5. And with the, just one more thing about the hose lines, the amount of water that we're going to be able to deliver off these fire engines, we're going from 150 gallons a minute to 326 gallons a minute between the 1.5 inch, 2 inch, and the 2.5. So. There's the capability of delivering lots of water quickly is there.
And that was one of the key components of sustaining the 6-line pre-connected opportunities and options, so that you have that, 2, I'm going to use the word cross lays, 2, 1.5 inch lines, a 2 inch line, a 2.5 inch line, a longer, 1.5 inch line. All of those still there so that pre-connect availability is ready. And one of the things that is going to transition, and it has already, the Blitz Light or the Blitz Fire is going to be replaced with the Ram. Can you go ahead and tell us about that, and that's no longer going to be connected?
Right. The Blitz Light that we're currently using is going to be replaced with the RAM. It's the Rapid Attack Monitor from Elkhart. It's going to be able to deliver 500 gallons per minute. It does not have an automatic shutoff, like the Blitz Light does not have an automatic shutoff. We decided, or the group decided, that they wanted that extra pre-connect attack line on the back of this fire engine as another capability of deploying an additional attack line. So we went away with the pre-connected rapid attack monitor, and that'll be in a compartment, and we have been able to add an additional attack line on the rear of the fire engine. This particular rapid attack monitor is it's small, it folds up, it does deliver the 500 gallons per minute. We'll provide a website where guys can see this thing in action, as well as the nozzles, and It'll have the fog as well as the smoothbore tips. The group's feeling was that having a pre-connect, once you decide, make that decision that we're going to be defensive or we're going to use it as a device to take care of exposures, we're not in the so-called running mode, we're in the defensive hold mode, and it didn't need to be pre-connected, but we still have the 2.5 that has the nozzle that can be broken down and used, and we also had the dead load of 500 feet of 3-inch.
Right.
So the capability's there.
And as our monthly basic training topic for this month is, I'm going to use the phrase master streams. It's talking about the blitz fire, blitz light, crossfire base. All of the engine companies that come in with the Pierce order will be bringing the crossfire base as well. So that'll get us up to almost completely outfitting the engine company fleet with that base, and that gives you that 1250 with the anti-tip capability to have that as a ground option for flows in excess of 500. And there's times for that, there's no doubt. And that's what the crossfire base complement out there we have right now allows us to, if you need to put 1,000 or 1250 on the ground and unmanned and in an advanced position, get a crossfire base, pop the crossfire off and put it on the ground and use it. Because obviously that difference is substantial between the 500 and the blitz light and 1,000, 1250 with the crossfire.
Sure.
And that's just a point of another tactic or another tool in the toolbox. So what do you see as any future changes, or what's next in the industry that may influence?
For those who know me know that I'm constantly looking to see what new tools are out, whether it be for a truck company or engine company. And the guys that know me know I'm a truck guy. I don't get excited over engine company stuff, but I'm pretty excited about being able to put these tools in the guys' hands for the engine company. And as things kind of develop, with Chief Friedman, talking with him and with Chief Doyle, that I'm always keeping my ear out for new tools, and if I see something, I'll forward it through. Just like we did for the ladder trucks, if I see something, I kind of push it up. The one thing that I am excited about with the engine company is having that additional attack line on the back, and so people know, it's not a secret. We're going to have 200-300 foot lines coming off the back, 1.5 and 2-inch, and then we're going to have another 2-inch, which will be 250 feet, and then the 250 feet of the 2.5 with the smooth bore. So. Right. A lot of water delivery capability off of one engine company for quick attack.
Yep, no doubt, and a lot of work was done over an extended period of time.
Yes.
And it's a perpetual and a continuous process. So, one to say thank you to the folks at 1 and 8, 16, 18, and 34 for that work. As things evolved, we kept coming back with other asks and other points of look at. And it's appreciated how they always said, okay, sure, let's go and take a peek at it. Anything else to add about the hose and nozzle components?
I'd ask everybody to go take a look at Mercedes' website, see how the hose is constructed, how there's a machine that actually weaves the hose as they introduce the inner liner as a molten state, and like you said, it permeates the fibers and it locks in, and delaminates next to impossible.
Right.
And getting these guys in the field to test this stuff and have ownership in that, it kind of, you could see them. They were very happy with at the end of the day, they had 100% say of what we're going to buy.
And one of the things that's being tested or developed as a test right now in the industry is braking, bursting, and how the hose deals with an assault by fire. And some of our friends are working on that, and that's not a standard yet, but Mercedes is right in there with the capability of how would you best describe its reaction to a thermal assault?
Adam St. John, is a member of the Wheaton Rescue Volunteer Rescue Squad, also an ATF, works at ATF in Beltsville. He produced an article back in April of last year in Fire Engineering and about thermal assault of hose and how it reacted. And there's a list of all the hose that they tested, and the Mercedes tested above mid-range. One of the things that I was told from his group was that it didn't actually burst right away. It kind of wept, and then you didn't lose pressure, and then it would finally it would get to the point where it would deteriorate, and then it would burst. But I like the results that they got out of that, and again, like you said, it's not an industry test now. I think that's the future of fire hose. I think you're going to see more hose coming on the market, like we talked about earlier. They had some prototypes of Kevlar hose and things like that that obviously performed really well because of the material. There's lots of stuff that's changing in the fire service, and I challenge everybody is keep your ear open, and if you see something, bring it up to somebody so we can take a look at it, because our county, we're pretty progressive when it comes to change, and when it comes to new things that are out there. We'll test it, and if it works, we'll get it, and we'll send it out to the guys and get their hands on it.
Yep, and that's one of the things about the department being large as it is. We do want to have, as we talked about, uniform and standard components, so that when you're in a rig in the 5th Battalion, or you're in a rig on the 1st Battalion, you got something you've seen and familiar with. So it is great to be able to work with technology and equipment, and then be able to get and integrate the new tools and components. And the question always is, and as these production pictures show us, 2 weeks ago, the last week of June, the committee was out at the Pierce factory looking at the production. This is engine 1. It was cab was at paint. Cab was being upfitted with gauges, fitting, and wiring. The pump module was being installed on the body, as well as the module. The body was test fitted, and you see here some graphics were installed, and it was getting assembled now. Pierce was closed last week, being the 4th of July week, so we won't get our next update until later this week. A couple things are being looked at, and that's why you're doing engineering on one of 24 to figure out things, and there's a couple things that are under the works, but still looking forward to seeing that here at CMF, or in the county shortly. Can't give you a date and a time right now, because it's going to change with a couple hiccups of something that needs to be engineered. But that's the status there. The 2 new tankers, I believe they're going to be in the county this week. That's 13 and 31. They're pretty close to ready. And then in the same week, so 2 weeks ago, the engine committee, or the other parts of that engine committee, were out at Rosenbauer doing the inspection on the 4-brush engine. So there's a couple things that they were looking at. There was a question from the engineering as to how one of the components was going to work, and how that was intended by the goal and group. So things are moving along, but that's another update as to things that are moving forward, and getting ready to move the rescue squad selection forward with the Office of Procurement. That'll be probably looking at 2, maybe 3 rescue squads there. So a lot of more movement on the fleet front for sure. So thank you very much. Thanks for everybody that did the work on the hose process, and definitely appreciate that activity. So as we talked about hose, as we talked about the work and their interactions with how we accept technology or accept change in industry thinking, wanted to say always thank you for everybody's willingness. We're doing eMeds Elite training here as we speak right now, as that's another change of platform and technology. There's a lot of that change and adjustment going on. So always keep your ear open, as Dave said. Keep your mind open as well, to be accepting new information and change your perspectives on what we know as, quote, fact, and some of our opinions, and understand that new facts are always coming out, and we need to accept those after understanding those new facts, so we can use them appropriately in our decision making and in our work processes. So that's a part of change in this type of environment. Wanted to touch base. Wanted to thank everybody within the department, as we have just recently had a pretty significant injury with one of our members on duty. everybody who was engaged and involved with the incident at Station 12. Thank you very much. Everybody who's been supporting the shift and the member Alan Barnes and his injury. Great deal of support. Great deal of thanks go out to those phone calls, emails, text, everything that supported that. Alan is got a road of recovery ahead, but is in a good place, and we got a good network supporting him, and a good network supporting the 16B, as well as everybody else who's an extended relation and extended part of that fire department family. So our thoughts go out to Alan and his wife and everybody in that 16B family, and thank you to everybody who supported and played a role in the last week with that very serious injury. We are in July. We've talked about it. You hear me highlight it. We've had a few good fires recently. The heat and humidity is really kicking and definitely a factor there. Please make sure you're coming to work ready. Make sure you're coming to your duty night ready. Do that proper hydration. Have that capability so that you're not starting off with your tank low and being dehydrated. Having that right amount of fluids, keeping yourself hydrated throughout the day. Also understand the impact that heat's going to have on the work rotation and the work stress. We have that accommodation, or we have that addressed with our respiratory protection policy, so we can focus on that while also mitigating that heat stress that's attacking the body, while being protective to the respiratory and the long-term health of our members. Definitely make sure you're looking at that cleaning and taking that debris and getting that rapidly, getting the skin around the face piece, the arms and the face and all that cleaned when you get out and you go through rehab, so that you're keeping as much of the carcinogens and the impacts of that soot and fire off of your most vulnerable skin. Clean your apparatus, clean your gear, take a good shower when you get back, so that you're getting rid of that as soon and as fast as possible. So again, take care, stay hydrated, and until next month, take care.